We have to really start questioning, can we actually reach certain levels of righteousness when we're in the same pollution?
I've been in those environments. You've been in those environments. I agree with you 100%. Environment definitely matters.
A lot of our couples, they're so broken, there's not really much you can do.
But it seems really easy to jump into a marriage and jump out of the marriage.
We have issues with, what we call jinn, or people consider them to be demons. They show something to light and they're completely different. Women, men, it doesn't matter, mothers, fathers. A person gets out of prison and they're praised. We're dealing with people that are obsessed with all types of ills, not even gonna name them. We know what goes on in the chain gang.
Get your copy of the Hijrah Handbook at book.makehijrah.com. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In this podcast, we meet our brother Bilal Asim. He's been living in the Muslim world for over 13 years. He gives his insight on the unique conditions of the Muslims in the West. You've lived abroad for quite some time now. So what would you say are the differences between living in the Muslim world and living in the States?
Down south, you find that it's a big difference from just the demographics of the northern part of the States and the South. So especially when you come over here, I kind of found a number of similarities in the family structure.
Okay.
Growing up, I could easily jump on my bike, see a couple of my aunties, uncles hit their refrigerators, lay on the couch, and just see the family. It wasn't until I got here when I started interacting with a lot of the brothers where I realized that they didn't really have a family structure. So I kind of really understood and merged in easily with the Egyptian culture and going to the Gulf with the family structure. So it's kind of.
So your family lived in the same neighborhood?
Yeah,
everybody
in the same city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's not. Maybe that's
it's common. It's
South.
common
In the South, it's common.
Yeah, it's common.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of people lived in the North. The families from down south.
They left from Georgia, Alabama.
Right.
They haven't seen their mother's sisters. They don't know their aunties.
Right.
But we, usually in our communities, you know all your aunties and uncles. They go to the same church, and you know what I mean. That's just how it is.
Right. So when you came to Egypt, was Egypt the first place you came to?
Yeah, Egypt was the first place I came to.
So when you came to Egypt and you saw the family and how people interacted with their families and everything, that wasn't uncommon to you.
Yeah, that was very common. I fit in real easy.
Right. So I'm sure you know that a lot of us don't have that.
Yeah.
Right. So how does that affect us when we decide to leave the States and come to another country?
Well, even if people do have it, doesn't mean that the families aren't broken. Because we can find in our communities where a lot of the families on drugs, but they're still together. Unfortunately, the issue of constantly visiting from a child. I visited family members in federal prisons, state prisons, and continue on. So people knew their families, but they still were broken. So coming over here, a lot of times you don't realize that you're supposed to fit into a piece, or you're supposed to add to a piece of a puzzle. We kind of really try to create everything on our own. The impact of individualism is something that we have to really analyze and attack in Islamic education. For instance, back in the day, you would be like, when I cop this, watch how they see me.
All right.
I got this outfit. They gonna see me when I come with this outfit, or I buy this car, watch how I come. I'm gonna show myself.
Right.
So we're used to being praised for individuality. But when you come here, you realize that everything's in unison, the people working together in general, there's a whole lot more of a collective effort. Right. People are not making decisions on their own.
Right. So, when you became Muslim, did you have a different outlook on what family should be like? Or was it kind of similar to what you had already experienced growing up?
Honestly, you don't really understand family structure until you're educated and you see an example. And that's one of the benefits of living abroad, is that you actually get to have a chain. One of the issues that we have is people are learning deen, but they don't have any salaf.
Okay.
The concept of someone preceding you in righteousness.
Okay.
So we have a lot of people with, good intentions, and they're learning and understanding the religion theoretically. But a woman needs to have a model. A young man needs to have a model. A student needs to have a model.
Right.
You know, the leader of a community needs to have a model.
Right.
So a lot of times we lack those models. So we got a lot of freestyling in the community, even if it's with good intentions.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother Hamza from the Make Hijrah channel. Now, many of you have requested consulting services from us, so we have created a page just for you.
I noticed a lot of us, we marry frequently, right? Especially after becoming Muslim. I don't know if it has to do with having girlfriends or activity that we were used to prior to being Muslim. But it seems really easy to jump into a marriage and jump out of the marriage. And a lot of times, the sister doesn't have a Muslim family, just a lot of time, not all the time. And usually the wakil becomes the brother over there or the imam over here. So what some people see this as like a crisis, a marriage crisis. So, I mean, how can we deal with that? A lot of us end up taking that and bringing it over somewhere else where that doesn't really exist like that. You know, we come to it, and this is the Muslim countries in general. You go to a Muslim country, say, I want to get married, and then you end up marrying a sister. And sometimes people make it easy for you to get married, and then you still do that same type of activity that you were doing before. So explain that. Explain what this crisis is when it comes to marriage amongst the Muslims.
In general, when we talk about the crises, we're talking about the institution of marriage. So our conceptualization a lot of times is wrong. When we talk about revelation descended upon a community. It affected individuals, it affected the families, and it built communities and nations. So we have to look into the application of using revelation, and we realize that it's complete and it descended upon a community. We don't have a lot of times the conceptualization of what is the family, what is the community, and what is the nation. So it becomes hard for you to understand your role, to fulfill your obligation. So the first thing is to have that tasawwur, that conceptualization of what is this ideal of community. And it's customary. So you can go to Europe, or you can go to a mountainous region, or to the African country that's non-Muslim. In customary, they all understand the realities of us having. They all understand the realities of us having a common goal, a common denominator, objectives that we all have to meet. So because of the environment in the West, we're used to welfare. We have a poor mentality of being taken care of. So we lose the concept of coming together to meet the demand and fulfilling objectives in unison. So that's one problem. Understanding it's an institution. An institution is a structure of commonality in morals, values, and direction. So Islam calls us to establishing the institution upon Iman. So we need to, first just check ourselves and realize, like, how do I see marriage as an institution? So going back to what you're saying, a lot of people just see it as something, as a necessity of life to procreate. I need to get my rocks off. I need to have some type of intimacy. Right. I need some comfort. Some people, I just need to be taken care of. So those are things, but those are not objectives. Those are necessities that come with it. We're supposed to be fulfilling greater objectives in this institution of marriage.
That's a deep concept, but practically, somebody that's already married, for example, someone that they get the general idea of what you're saying. Yeah. But how could we put that into practice? Like, how could we implement that?
The first thing is practically the easy way, or the prophetic model, is for people to understand the concept of Iman. The concept of building servitude, ubudiyya, is essential. Why? Because hardships is when you use your Iman. You have to mobilize your iman throughout your situations, understanding of risk. You know, we have the concept of a damsel in distress. So you have a lot of brothers that just want to marry just to help someone instead of connecting people to the iman. You have a lot of sisters that's looking to get married just because they feel distressed. So the concept of iman is the first building block to being able to rectify a situation. You know, accountability is a major thing. As I traveled amongst, you know, cities and villages and interact with my friends that are born Muslim over here in the side of the world, you see that there's always some accountability. You know, the woman's like, I have to go to the elder in our family. Even it maybe not even be her father. It may be an elder, uncle, or grandfather, where the marriage is being checked through that elder. You know, so we don't have accountability. You know, also having checks and balances as to how a person is going to be taken care of. You know, the concept of takafut or suitability. We really need to address the issue of what is suitability when marrying outside of your race or your class or your city, your environment. The suitability seems to change. So we need to understand what's suitability.
That's deep, man, because I don't think many of us, it's not all of us, man, you know.
Yeah, it's not all of us.
A lot of us that don't come from strong families, we don't really know what to do or what to expect, you know, and sometimes we choose for the wrong reasons, or what we think might be the right reasons, but we don't have anybody to consult. Like, especially if your father wasn't in your life, then he's not there to tell you, like, wait, hold up, let's do this, you know. So you're kind of on your own. But I guess the biggest takeaway then would be to have some people that can help you, especially in our condition. Like even Muslims in the States that are immigrants or come from immigrant families, a lot of them still have that family.
Still have the structure.
Right. And in some cases, they set this thing up. Like, they say, you're going to marry this one. He ain't old enough or whatever. But in their mind, they're like, you're going to marry this cousin over here or whatever. But again, like people that converted to Islam, they don't have that. And there's a lot of things missing, you know. So how would you, or what would you recommend for, I guess, men and women? Women especially, because they don't know really how to choose if they're trying to choose on their own. So, I mean, for the people, let's start with the people that are looking to get married or freshly married or, you know, a few years in. How can they start to understand marriage as this institution rather than this fulfillment of, you know, desires or what have you?
The first thing is we can't oversimplify it. It's very complex and there's compound issues. You know, there has to be a group of people that understand sociology and anthropology to be able to direct. You know, the concept of quarterbacking, as we said, there has to be some type of quarterbacking in the community. You know, leadership is always at the center of direction, community, and obtaining the objectives. You don't blame a sheep for being misled. You blame the shepherd. So we have to start defining what's a shepherd and what's their responsibilities. That's one. Then we have to start building models. A lot of times we do too much talking. We need to put out a guide, say 1 through 10. This is the things that you need to be able to understand and constantly view yourself, be introspective, check yourself. Where are you from that? So when people start looking at themselves in the structured criteria, then they start to be able to see their deficiencies. You know, you have to know your deficiencies before you can actually, you know, build it. So a lot of times we don't have structure, and that goes back to curriculum and leadership. You can't just start talking about have good etiquettes and, you know, fear Allah. No, there has to be some structure. It has to be linear, you know, 1 through 5. This is what you need to check off. This is what you need to start doing. You know, the concept of building a movement and a mu'mina is different than just teaching correct Islam. You know, we need to build believing men and believing women.
What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate on that?
The concept of the concept of believing men, believing women is that people, they have sidq. Sadiqeen means that what you believe, it manifests on your tongue and your limbs. And that comes by practice, riyada. Constantly being persistent. You fall, you get back up.
Right.
Using the religion, using the fundamentals of ikhlas and tawheed and tawakkul and rajat, that you actually have a connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, and then another issue is the environment. We have to really start questioning, can we actually reach certain levels of righteousness when we're in the same pollution? You know, the concept of putting on some, cologne on a musky body. You know, this is a reality. This is a big problem.
Right.
The seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, we see that there is a move from environments that are harmful to the iman, that are oppressive.
Right.
A lot of times we just don't, we're afraid to run. And that shows that there is an issue with the concept of tawakkul. And it's not always moving abroad, going to another country. You know, it's amazing that we have just in the US, the demographic is wide.
Right.
You know, from the inner city of the inner city to the outskirts changes everything. You know, having the concept that I can build, Allah will sustain me.
Right.
My rizq will come if I make that sincere move to change my condition.
Right.
Then we have the issue of why are we building Islamic centers in the center of filth? To have a musalla, a place of prayer, is a necessity. Right. But we're talking about making established where people are actually leaving, the outskirts to come into places of harm.
Right.
Is another issue that we have to address. Right. Why aren't we acquiring land? Why aren't we trying to move out? Whereas, in return it's cheaper. Right. In more than often.
Right. So when you say we, who are you talking about?
We, in general, I'm speaking about the indigenous U.S. community. This encompasses mainly African Americans. They're the biggest demographic. Right. And we have Hispanics, and we have the inner city Caucasians. We all live in the same struggle. Right. So when we're talking about sustainability, this is from the objectives of the religion, to be sustainable. So we have a group that is indigenous to the West, and we don't have sustainability. So the goal becomes, how can we use the Quran and the Sunnah to gain an objective in the religion, which is sustainability? Right. You know, a lot of the foreigners, they come with the culture, they come with the economic system, they come with a pipeline. Right. Someone's going to help me. I'm going to stay with him. He's going to get some money. We're going to send it back. Right. Someone's going to take care of my kids over there. Or if I do these, I can send them back. There's some type of structure. Right. But when we're talking about the inner city of African Americans and Hispanics and even the Caucasians coming from trailer parks and coming from the ghettos, right, we all in the same dynamic. Right.
What would you say if someone said to you, I've been in those environments, you've been in those environments, and I agree with you 100% that environment definitely matters. You know, it's one thing you teach in the house, another thing you see outside, especially for children, So, I mean, what would you say about people saying, okay, you know what? Let's pool our resources together and let's go over here to this other place. And I know we say a lot of times it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be in the Muslim world. But I will argue that I think it's better in the Muslim world because things are going without you. I don't have to worry about you calling it then. Like Bilal and show up, we won't call it then now. It's not like that. It's already going. Like it's moving. The Eids, the different types of parts of the religion that are signs of our religion are here. Mosques everywhere, all that. People wearing hijab and practicing in their own way. Sometimes you find people not always doing that, but I'm saying, why not uproot and move to where the Muslims are, as opposed to moving to like a suburban area? What would you say about that?
I don't think anybody's going to say that it's not better. It's a reality. It's better. Are the people who believe or the people who know and those who don't know, are they equal? No, they're not the same. Right. So we're talking about people that their fundamental practice of life is built upon Iman and those that aren't. So it's going to be better. Right. But the issue, like you're saying, you're talking about practicality. Everybody can't get up and move. So, but people can transfer from a place of danger to a place of less danger, Then when you talk about pulling resources, we can't pull no resources together because our fundamentals of character and morals is nearly diminished. when you read in sociology and anthropology, there's something called shame culture. You know, when you're here in the Muslim lands, they say, "Hey," and it has an impact on someone. They're like, "Oh, that's shameful.
Right.
Let me check myself."
Right.
That is being erased. You know, me growing up in a what we call old time religion, a Southern Baptist society, there's a lot of things that I didn't even think would happen until I started hearing stories.
Right.
You know, you can be in the hood, and when the grandma come through, people put the joint out.
Right, right.
You know what I mean? They turn the music down, and they go get her groceries and take it in the house, and they all got dreads and gold teeth.
Right.
So there was a level of shame. Can't do that no more. So that underlying aspect of shame is what we talk about calling to Iman, but not just going through books. We have to understand the anthropology, the psychology of a people, and use it in our teaching to be able to address the ills, to address the trauma, to address the filth and the illnesses of the heart. That's a major task.
Right.
And we oversimplify, like, no, we just call to the Sunnah, we just call to the correct understanding of Islam. We teach the books that are, no, it don't work like that. You have to mobilize the correct understanding in a way that it changes and rectifies the people. So when we talk about going back to the point of mobilizing resources, if we were to bring all the resources together, how would we be able to build when we have people that don't even understand the basics of respecting the elders? You know, when it comes to, you know, fundamentals of discipline, you know, I've seen over the years a major difference on how people discipline their children. You know, women having a level of respect for their husbands and their children, it is varying.
Right.
So we have to be able to go back and instill principles and morals in a written fashion that people are going to be held accountable. You know, not just theory like this is from the religion that you don't do that. No, you have to look at it daily. This is why the Prophet ﷺ in Medina, in the souk, he put a sahifa, a piece of paper, to remind the people of what was supposed to be done in the busiest place of the community.
Right.
Check yourself. You know what I mean? So we have to have some type of checks and balances on a daily basis.
At MakeHijrah.com, we're dedicated to helping Muslims like you make the move to the Muslim world with ease. Our latest project is the Hijrah Readiness Assessment Test, a short, insightful survey designed to help you identify your strengths and areas for improvement on your Hijrah journey. Visit HijrahTest.com now and start your journey towards a successful Hijrah, inshallah.
Recently, there was a shooting at the Eid prayer in Philadelphia. And I'm not from there. You're not from there. To understand, like, in detail, like, the dynamics going on there. But people are talking about people embracing Islam and not necessarily embracing it, understanding what they're getting themselves into or what they're joining. So they may take the Shahada so they can be a part of this gang or whatever. It's not the true intention of taking Shahada, for example. So you'll find people coming in the masjid smelling like weed or whatever, and trying to talk to the sisters or whatever, this type of situation. So the question is, when a person embraces Islam, right, and they're trying to, generally you're trying to improve yourself, like you're trying to, you know, become a righteous person, right? What's missing in our communities that allows this thing to happen? Back in my day, a person accepts Islam and then they just go back to the streets. Like it's not like they in the streets and still Muslim like that.
Yeah.
It don't work like that. Like, and then like thobes and stuff like that. If you was really practicing, you was wearing a thobe, and because dudes can come up to you and be like, "Man, what's up with you?" You know, you get that type of response. You know what I mean? So if you was wearing a thobe, that means you was serious. You know, or kufi and all that. So. Again, a lot of people embrace Islam. A lot of people embrace Islam in the prisons and other places. They come to the community. They try to practice a little bit, but they never mixed it.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Like if they was going to do that, be in the streets, doing selling drugs and all that, they just keep that in the street and just stay in the street if they want to go that way. So what's happening? I mean, what's the situation now where you have people embracing Islam, but still they're going to shoot up the Eid prayer?
You know what I mean? That's unheard of. Like even in the States, that's unheard of. And definitely in the Muslim world, like that's it. You're not walking out of there. You try to do something like that. So, I mean, how does this relate to what you're saying? You know, and how can this be implemented practically?
It's a deep question. It's real complex. Like I said, we can't oversimplify it. But I think it's unfair to look at, like you say, the sheep and the shepherd. The sheep and the shepherd. Who are the shepherds? When Malcolm X, rahimahullah, accepted Islam, when Muhammad Ali, rahimahullah, toured the world and was calling to Islam, many countries seen it as a maslahah, a benefit to engage in their affairs, to get them teaching, and to make sure that they understood something about Islam and that they were catered to. So why is that not happening now? So that's the first level of a shepherd. Then we have people traveling abroad, learning. I'm here 13, 14 years.
Right.
I went to middle school, went to high school, went to college. I interact with the Ministry of Education. I understand their objectives.
Right.
That's a form of leadership. That's a shepherd. They have a curriculum for me to walk away with. You know, they have a 10, 20-year objective for the education system.
Right.
Where's it supposed to go? Then we talk about the leaders in the community. What are their objectives? What's your vision? Can you have a leader without a vision? Just realistically, can you have a leader without a vision? I don't think so.
Right.
So a lot of times we don't understand the difference between a teacher and a leader. So the concept of looking at a community, we have to look at our leadership all from the top all the way down, going to the parents.
Right.
What's the job of the leadership? Then we talk about new Muslims coming into Islam. What are they looking at to embody? So they like, it's this big disarray about, oh, wow, man, that's crazy. But that's been going on. We got some leaders that have never disassociated themselves from the dope dealers off the jump. In the South, when somebody came out the chain gang and they changed their life, they was in the church wholeheartedly. Or even if they did have one foot in, one foot out, it wasn't known. They had some shame to it.
Right.
But nobody was coming in the community and they was head first in the street and promoting that.
Right.
That's a problem today. Then we have the issue with the attack on the culture. You know, we have, as African Americans, the strongest culture in the world. It's everywhere. I'm just in Kazakhstan. I'm just walking with Islamic attire on, and the dude like, let me rap to you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just out of the blue. So this is the impact of our culture.
Right.
So now we know that if it is strong and is promoting the Quran and the Sunnah, Islam, family structure, then there will be some type of force from outside to undermine it. So that goes back to understanding history, sociology, and the powers at hand.
Right.
So it's complex. We can't oversimplify and just start pointing fingers.
Right.
We need leadership. It all goes back to leadership.
Right.
We have to start checking people from the top all the way to the parents. Nobody's free. Everybody has to be held accountable. The problem comes when we live in some type of utopia in our head that people overseas are going to come teach us and save us.
Right.
That's not, and they're not being held with checks and balances.
Right.
What's your curriculum? There's a ministry of Okaf that allows people to come teach us.
Right.
What were their objectives for come teaching us? What are we supposed to get from them coming to teach us?
Right.
Is there a vision?
Right.
I tell brothers all the time, look at all of our countries. You go to Pakistan, Egypt, the Gulf. They have a 20, 30, 20, 40 vision. So the person that's teaching you, what's their 20, 30, 20, 40 vision?
Right. No, that's deep. But I know you have a focus on marriage, right? And I know for sure that you can't expect the community to raise your child first. You know, it's your child, you're responsible. You're going to be asked about that. So we need to take that a lot more serious.
Yeah.
So what are you doing to help men and women produce healthier families? Like what's your objective?
My objective is always to call people to the concept of grounding Iman, because the 6 pillars of Iman is the fundamental basis of people being content with their conditions. in being able to understand how to maneuver in the test. Allah has created mankind in toil. Allah has created us in hardship. That's a necessity of our lives. We have to struggle day in and day out. Everyone's test is going to be different. Wealth, sickness, whatever it may be. Right. So your iman is what's going to actually help you to look and see your situation in a way and deal with it properly according to the religion.
Right.
So that's the first step. But like I say, it's just not teaching concepts. It's helping people to understand their psychology. It's very important that iman is a mental state. It's a state of the heart. It's a state of the actions and the limbs and the tongue. It's an environment. So when we're calling to iman, we have to make sure that we check off all of the aspects.
Right.
Then we have to look at there's stages of everyone. A lot of times we just have to focus on the youth. A lot of our couples, they're so broken, there's not really much you can do. You have to focus on the youth a lot of times, that we can build a generation of people that will leave off the negative traits and aspects that their parents and their elders had. So it's complex.
Right.
But our job is to look at every stage and deal with it accordingly using iman and the realities of the society.
So let's talk specifically about some of the problems that you see in dealing with different families and helping families. So what are the core problems that we're facing in marriage?
It's a lot. It's a lot. But some of the major issues is being unrealistic. We have to, I tell people all the time when I give them counsel, I say, if you were to take your good deeds and your bad deeds and turn it to a spouse, and your sustenance was going to be on the gauge of your good deeds, what would it look like? Your spouse would look the way your deeds look. Just be realistic. You know what I mean? You have a lot of youth that they want something from an individual, but you haven't put any work. And it's a problem with reverse. I had the problem. You come into Islam, it's like, I need her. Right. But this man just put 30 years in, or 20 years in with his daughter. How you supposed to get her?
Right.
But if you're like, nah, what you mean? I'm Muslim, I'm deen. No, you're unrealistic. You haven't proved anything in your deen.
Right. You
haven't stood the test of time. You know what I mean? So people are not being realistic. Then you have women that say, listen, I need a man like this. But it's like, look at your value. What are you able to master that he can leave you with, and independently you can master and handle that affair? This is the Rabbatul Bayt. A woman that she is a manager on her own in her world. So being unrealistic is a problem. This goes back to us not having guidelines. We need to write down principles of culture, so that people know that I can check myself with this.
Right.
We have also, we have issues in the spiritual world. We have issues with, what we call jinn, or people consider them to be demons. This is another issue. I deal with mainly with the women. A lot of brothers say, listen, man, my wife is afflicted, and it becomes problematic because sisters, they begin to lose hope. They feel like a burden, and they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They don't have the help.
Right.
That's the issue. Mental health. I don't like to use the Western terminology, but we deal with a lot of personality disorders. I say mental disorders, I mean personality disorders. Mental disorders is there too, but specifically personality disorders. We're talking about people that are they're different individual when they're behind doors. They show something to light and they're completely different. Women, men, it doesn't matter, mothers, fathers, and it becomes a problem because they show a face to the community, and then the person that's living with them, the children and the family, seeing a completely different animal. People can't submit and be, they can't be aided because they're carrying trauma and they don't know how to get the help. So we have to be able to deal with these personalities and mental disorders.
Right.
Likewise, we have to deal with the prison pipeline. It doesn't change.
Right.
The characters don't change. A person gets out of prison and they're praised. He's praised for getting out. We're happy that a person is released, but it's not a correction facility. We're dealing with people that are obsessed with all types of ills. Not even gonna name them. Just, we know what goes on in the chain gang, but people are coming out with these ills. So where is the structure for the re-entry programs? That's a necessity, because that's a major aspect of the culture, unfortunately.
Right.
The music, the entertainment, the dress, the commercials, everything is geared to be connected to the pipeline. So that's another issue. We have to address that. These are core problems.
Right.
We have the issue of materialism. And materialism is, or being materialistic, either or, is the lack of spirituality, intellectual concern, and cultural values. That the material world takes precedence over these three.
Right.
You know what I mean? That becomes a problem. That's the issue of tazkiyah to nafs. You know, we have to address that somehow.
Right.
The damsel in distress. This is another issue. Since the communities are broken, we have a lot of brothers that want to save the woman that's in distress. When you are taught to save a person that's drowning, the wisdom that is taught is that when you swim out to someone, you don't just grab them, because the person is going to grab you and you possibly both may drown. So you're taught to go under the water and grab them from the back and then pull them to safety. So the issue with the damsel in distress is no different. You go to help someone without understanding how to approach and how to deal with the situation, you both drown.
Right.
A person has to know what are the tools that are needed, what's the environment that's needed, what's the wisdom that's needed to be able to help someone that's distressed. You can't just go and say, I just want to help the sister. Or a sister, maybe in these days, I just want to help the brother. It don't work like that. You have to be, ready. You got to be suited and booted to perform.
Right.
We lack emotional intelligence. Being able to understand your spouse, that there's times that they're going to be stressed out, they're going to be irrational, and how to actually deal with that without just going head to head all the time. And that's something it's cultural.
Right.
You can find a bunch of men in society that understand that's how they are at this time.
Right.
And a bunch of women that understand that's how men are at this time. Oh, this is how they are when they come from this region.
Right.
And we deal with them according to that.
Right.
So we don't have that emotional intelligence that we need to build.
Right.
And the problems they go on. They're abundant. But we, in summary, we need to be able to have intimate, structured direction. That's the takeaway. Right. You can't just sit and just listen to information and think that I'm just learning authentic Islam.
Right.
There has to be someone that holds your hand, even if it's for that one situation.
Right.
Someone that's intimately, that understands your situation and concern. They have some structure to what they're telling you, and they're giving you direction. Do this, do that. Don't do this, don't do that.
I think a lot of us don't see that there's a problem.
Absolutely.
Do you have any way for somebody to look at themselves and say, okay, if this is happening, then maybe you need to talk to somebody? Or even a lot of times we shun therapy and all that kind of stuff. Not that I'm promoting it in that sense, in the Western sense, but I'm saying like asking somebody to help you out, asking for some type of structured program to get yourself into to try to correct some of those problems you have. I don't even know if we have that. I'm sure it's somewhere in the States.
Somewhere.
But I'm not sure if it's just I talk to the sheikh, talk to the imam or whatever, he give me some general advice and that's it. Is that enough? Or do we need some type of curriculum like you said?
Well, of course, it's an obligation upon the people that have experience. This is the barakah and the blessing of returning affairs back to elders.
Right.
That's elders in experience. The elders have to step up, even if it's just to say, young man, don't do that.
Right.
Sister, that ain't gonna get you nowhere.
Right.
You can't always force a change, but you can plant that seed to make people actually be introspective. Think about it. That ain't gonna benefit you. So having the elders is important. It's important that they step up to the task.
Right.
Someone has to pull your coat to understanding your affairs.
Right.
And then like you say, curriculum. But curriculum means that people need to actually have direction. a guide,
Right.
a course,
Right.
training sessions,
Right.
not just being taught and reminded and admonished.
Mm.
We have to look at education now as training sessions.
Right.
How are you going to be trained to fulfill your obligation? That's the understanding of tarbiyah.
Right.
But tarbiyah today is just being correct, which is not tarbiyah at all, linguistically nor legislatively. Cultivation in any field of life is that you take somebody from A to Z,
Right.
Or from A to one point to the next point,
Right.
So that is something that we got to consider that.